They say wild Mustangs never bout a man. But on a quiet Wyoming night, under the pale glow of a full moon, one did. Jake Turner, weathered cowboy, drifter of the high plains, was riding home slow. His old gelding, Dusty, carried him steady through sagebrush and shadow. The land stretched wide and silent, broken only by the whisper of wind and the cry of a far-off coyote. Jake wasn't the kind of man to spook easy. He'd worked ranches since boyhood, seen stampedes, lightning storms, and winters that froze cattle solid. But nothing, not the gunfights he'd walked away from, not the lonely nights on empty trails, prepared him for what stepped onto his path that night. A foal, barely 2 months old. Its legs trembled as it stood in the moonlight. Its coat glimmered silver, its eyes wide with fear and something more. It didn't bolt the way Mustangs should, didn't wheel around to vanish into the night. It stood there, waiting. Jake pulled back on his reins. "Well now, what in God's name are you doing out here, little one?" The foal nickered, a soft, pleading sound. Then it turned its head, glanced back toward the canyon beyond the ridge, and pawed the ground. It looked at Jake again, desperate. Jake's brow furrowed. "You trying to tell me something, boy?" The foal whinnied louder this time, stamping its hoof as if urging him to follow. Dusty snorted, uneasy, but Jake eased his horse forward. He knew wild animals didn't act this way unless something was terribly wrong. They crested the ridge, moonlight spilling over the canyon floor below. And that's when Jake saw her, the mare, a powerful Mustang, her coat dark as midnight, lay crumpled among the rocks. Blood darkened her flank where a jagged branch had pierced her side. She struggled, tried to rise, but fell back with a broken, shuddering cry. The foal rushed to her, nudging her neck, nickering desperately. Jake's chest tightened. He'd seen wounded horses before, seen them put down when the pain was too much. But this was no ranch mare with an owner to care for her. This was a wild Mustang, free, untamed, and dying. He swung down from Dusty, boots crunching on gravel. The foal didn't run. It stood between him and its mother, eyes locked on Jake as if weighing his soul. Jake crouched slow, voice low and steady. "Easy now. I ain't here to hurt ya." The mare lifted her head weakly. Her breaths came ragged, shallow. The wound was deep, too deep for a horse to survive on its own in the wild. Jake knew the law of nature. Weakness meant death. Predators would find her by dawn. The herd would move on. That's how it always was. But as the foal pressed its tiny body against its mother's, nuzzling, begging her to rise, Jake felt something crack inside him. A memory he thought long buried. A child's cry. A hospital bed. A loss he never spoke of. His jaw tightened. He rubbed a hand across his stubbled face. "Damn it," he muttered. He should have walked away. Should have left the wild to its own laws. But he couldn't. Not with those eyes staring at him. Eyes that begged, that pleaded, that broke through every wall he'd built around his heart. He looked at the mare's wound again. She was bleeding slow, steady. Not too late. Not yet. If he acted fast, maybe, just maybe, he could save her. Jake stood, pulling his saddlebag free. He carried supplies, whiskey, a knife, some bandages, a needle and thread. Tools of a cowboy who'd patched more than a few horses on the trail. The foal whinnied nervously as Jake approached the mare, but it didn't stop him. Didn't bolt. It stayed close, trembling, trusting. Jake knelt beside the mare, whispering low. "Easy, girl, easy now. I'm gonna help ya. Might hurt some, but it's the only chance you got." He poured whiskey over the wound. The mare shrieked in pain, legs thrashing weakly. Jake pressed his weight down, steady, murmuring soothing words. The foal circled, nickering, pacing in panic. Jake worked quick. He cut the branch free, stitched the torn flesh, wrapped it tight with bandages torn from his own shirt. His hands were steady, but inside his chest thundered. Every second mattered. Every breath from the mare felt like it could be her last. Finally, after what felt like hours, he tied the last knot and sat back, sweat dripping down his brow. The mare lay trembling, her eyes glazed but alive. Alive. Jake exhaled. He didn't know if she'd make it through the night, but he'd given her a fighting chance. The foal pressed its nose against Jake's arm, just for a moment. A soft, grateful touch. Jake froze. Wild Mustangs never did that. Not ever. And right then, under the Wyoming moon, Jake Turner swore an oath he didn't fully understand. He wasn't just saving a horse tonight. He was stepping into something bigger. Something that would change him forever. He looked out across the canyon, shadows shifting in the night. Somewhere, the herd was watching. Waiting. Jake rose, brushing dust from his hands. "All right," he said quietly. "We'll see this through. One way or another." And the cowboy, the foal, and the wounded mare lay beneath the stars as the first threads of an unbreakable bond were woven between man and Mustang. Chapter 2. A Dawn of Doubt. The sky bled from black to gray, then to the faintest rose of dawn. A thin mist clung to the Wyoming canyon floor, carrying with it the chill of morning. Jake Turner hadn't slept. He sat propped against a boulder, hat tilted low, eyes red-rimmed from watching through the long night. Dusty, his old gelding, cropped grass nearby, every so often lifting his head to snort at unseen shadows. But Jake's gaze never strayed far from the mare. She lay stretched out, sides rising and falling in slow, labored rhythm. The bandage he tied was soaked with blood, though not as much as he feared. She had made it through the night. That alone was a miracle. The foal hadn't left her side once. All night it stood watch, pressing close to her, nickering softly as if willing her to keep breathing. When she stirred, the foal's ears flicked, its eyes bright with hope. When she groaned, it pressed against her like a child against its mother's bed. Jake rubbed a calloused hand across his jaw. His stomach growled with hunger, his throat dry, but he ignored both. He'd patched plenty of animals in his life. Cattle gored on barbed wire, trail horses with split hooves, even the odd barn cat torn up by coyotes. But this was different. This wasn't his responsibility. This wasn't his fight. He could leave now. Saddle Dusty, ride back to the ranch town of Riverton, and no one would fault him for it. The wild had its own rules. Life and death out here weren't meant for man to meddle in. And yet, Jake's eyes lingered on the foal. The little thing lifted its head, those wide eyes locking on him again, the same way it had in the moonlight. As though it knew, as though it remembered what he had done. It gave a soft whinny, not frightened, not wild, almost trusting. Jake muttered under his breath, "Don't go looking at me like that. I ain't your savior." But he felt it just the same, the weight of an unspoken plea. The mare groaned, shifting. She tried to rise, legs trembling, but her body gave way and she collapsed again. Dust billowed. The foal squealed in panic, nuzzling her, pushing at her with its head as though it could lift her by sheer will. Jake was on his feet in an instant. He crouched by the mare, checked her wound. Still bleeding slow, but not enough to kill her outright, unless infection set in. Out here, without proper medicine, that was a death sentence. He sat back on his heels, cursing low. She ain't gonna make it alone. Not with that wound. Dusty pawed the ground, restless. The canyon walls caught the echo of his snorts. Somewhere high above, a hawk screamed, a sharp, cutting cry that sent a shiver through the foal. And then Jake heard it, a sound that made his blood run colder than the dawn air. Wolves. A long, low howl drifted on the breeze, answered by another, and another. The foal froze, ears twitching. The mare, weak as she was, struggled, nostrils flaring wide with alarm. Jake's hand went to the revolver at his hip. He hadn't counted on this. Out here, wolves didn't often bother a healthy herd of Mustangs, but a wounded mare? A helpless foal? They'd be easy pickings. His eyes swept the canyon rim. Shadows shifted in the thinning mist. Shapes moved between rocks. Watching, waiting. Jake rose to his full height, his voice low but firm. "Not tonight," he muttered. "Not while I'm breathing." He pulled his rifle from its scabbard on Dusty's saddle, checked the chamber, and stood guard. The foal pressed closer to him now, trembling, as if sensing he was its only shield. The wolves didn't come down. Not yet. They lingered on the edges, testing, circling. Their eyes glowed faint in the first light. Jake fired a warning shot, the crack echoing like thunder through the canyon. For a moment, silence fell. Then the howls picked up again. Louder, closer. The mare struggled to lift her head, but her strength was nearly gone. Jake swore under his breath. He knew he couldn't fight off a whole pack all night and all day, not with only a handful of bullets. He was outnumbered, outmatched, unless his eyes fell on the foal, shaking, desperate, looking to him for what to do. And for the first time, Jake didn't just see an animal. He saw a partner. He crouched low, whispered rough but steady. "Listen here, little one. If your mama's gonna live, we're gonna have to move her. Get her out of this canyon. Get her to help." The foal nickered, tilting its head as if it understood. Jake glanced at Dusty. The old gelding pawed the dirt, uneasy but loyal as ever. He could carry supplies, maybe even drag a travois, if Jake rigged one from branches and rope. It wouldn't be easy. It might not even work, but it was the only chance they had. And if they failed, the wolves would do what wolves always did. Jake set his jaw. He'd lost too much in his life already. Family, friends, people he couldn't save. He wasn't about to add this foal's eyes to that list. He rose, gripping the rifle tight. "All right then," he said into the morning air, to the mare, to the foal, to himself. "We fight. We move. We survive." The foal whinnied, soft and trembling but determined, as if answering him. And as the sun broke over the canyon rim, painting the Wyoming sky gold and crimson, Jake Turner began the hardest rescue of his life, leading a wounded Mustang mare, her desperate foal, and his own weary soul into a day that would test every ounce of grit he had left. Chapter 3: The Hardest Trail. The sun rose hot and merciless, chasing away the dawn mist. Its light poured down into the canyon, turning stone and sage into burning gold. Jake Turner squinted against the glare, sweat already prickling beneath his hat. The mare lay where she had fallen, her breath rasping. She tried once more to rise, her muscles quivering, her wound seeping, but collapsed again with a shudder that nearly broke Jake's heart. The foal pressed its little body to her side, nickering, pleading. Jake knelt, laid a hand against the mare's neck. Her skin was hot beneath his palm. Fever. Infection was setting in fast. He exhaled slow. "She won't make it down here," he muttered. "We gotta move her. Now." Dusty flicked an ear, watching as Jake set to work. His hands moved with the efficiency of a man who had built shelters in blizzards, mended broken wagons, and stitched cattle on open range. He cut saplings from the canyon brush, stripped them, and lashed them into a rough travois, a crude sled of wood and rope. Dusty snorted when Jake hitched it to his saddle. The old gelding's eyes rolled white, sensing the weight to come, but Jake patted his neck. "Easy, boy. You carry me through worse. You can carry her too." The foal watched, ears twitching, as though it understood the plan. It took all of Jake's strength to lift the mare enough to roll her onto the travois. She cried out, a raw, piercing sound that cut through the canyon. Jake gritted his teeth, whispering steady words. "Easy, girl. Easy now. We're getting you out of here." The foal trotted circles, panicked, until finally it pressed its nose to Jake's arm, almost as if lending him courage. At last, the mare was settled, bound with rope so she wouldn't slide. Dusty shifted under the weight, muscles taut, but he held steady. Jake gave him a nod of thanks. "Let's move." They started slow, hooves crunching over gravel, the travois scraping across stone. Every jolt sent the mare into trembling shudders. Jake's got twisted with each one, but forward was the only choice. The foal trotted beside them, never straying more than a few steps. Its wide eyes flicked constantly to its mother, then to Jake, as if tethered by invisible thread. Hours dragged on. The sun climbed higher, baking them all. Jake's shirt stuck to his back with sweat. His throat burned with thirst. He rationed his canteen, one swallow for himself, one splash across the mare's lips, though most of it dribbled away. And all the while, the wolves followed. Their howls rose at intervals, closer now. Shadows flickered at the canyon rim. Once, Jake caught sight of them, 6 or 7, lean and hungry, their eyes gleaming yellow in the glare. He fired a shot into the air. They vanished back into the rocks, but not for long. Jake cursed under his breath. He knew the truth. The wolves weren't giving up. They were waiting, watching for the moment when his strength, or Dusty's, gave out. By midday, Jake's arms shook with exhaustion. His boots slipped on the loose rock. Every step of Dusty's hooves seemed to grind heavier against the earth. The mare moaned, weak and fading. The foal squealed, bumping against her side, desperate. Jake dropped to one knee beside her, panting. He pressed a hand against her wound, still bleeding, though slower now. Her skin burned like fire. He looked up, scanning the horizon. They had barely cleared the canyon floor. Miles yet to go before Riverton. He felt despair press in like the sun's weight. He could almost hear a voice, his old foreman back on the Turner Ranch. "You can't save every horse, Jake. Sometimes you got to let him go." Jake closed his eyes, jaw clenched. He'd let go once. A wife, a child, a family he'd buried and never spoken of since. And he'd sworn, back then, that he wouldn't care again. But here he was, caring, fighting, bleeding in the heat of the Wyoming sun for a wild mare that should have meant nothing. A soft nudge at his shoulder pulled him from the darkness. The foal, its tiny muzzle pressed into him, trembling but insistent, begging, trusting. Jake's throat tightened. He rose, gripped Dusty's reins, and forced his legs to keep moving. Not today, he growled to the empty sky. Not this time. They pushed on, step by step. The canyon walls thinned, opening onto the scrub plains. The wind carried with it the scent of sage and dust and wolves. Jake heard the growl before he saw them. The pack slunk from the rocks, gray shapes melting into the sunlit brush. Their leader, broad-shouldered, scar down his muzzle, crept forward, eyes fixed on the mare. The foal screamed in terror, pressing close to its mother. Dusty reared, nearly toppling the travois. Jake swung his rifle up, heart pounding. "Back off," he roared, firing. The bullet kicked dirt at the alpha's paws. The wolf flinched but didn't retreat. The pack spread wider, circling. Jake fired again, then again. Dusty danced, foam flecking his mouth. The foal bolted in panic, then froze, halfway, torn between flight and its mother. Jake knew his bullets were running low, knew the wolves were too many, and in that instant he made his choice. He dropped from Dusty, planted himself between the mare, the foal, and the circling pack. His rifle up, teeth clenched, every muscle screaming, but his voice was steady. "You want her?" he growled. "You'll have to go through me." The wolves crept closer, lips curling, breath steaming in the heat. The foal pressed against Jake's leg now, trembling but unyielding. The mare, weak as she was, lifted her head just enough to snort, a sound fierce despite her wound. And Jake Turner stood tall in the blazing sun, one man and a Mustang Foal against a pack of wolves, knowing that what happened in the next few breaths would decide all their fates. Chapter 4. The Standoff. The Wyoming sun blazed overhead, heat rippling off the canyon floor. Dusty stomped and snorted, foam dripping from his bit, the travois dragging behind him with the wounded mare barely clinging to life. And around them, wolves. 7 shadows moved in a deadly circle, paws silent on the dust, eyes burning yellow with hunger. The alpha, a scar-muzzled brute with a coat dark as coal, crept forward, his lips peeled back to show long, gleaming teeth. Jake Turner's rifle was steady, though his heart thundered like a runaway herd. Sweat dripped from his temple, stinging his eyes, but he didn't blink. Not once. Not one step closer, he growled through clenched teeth. The foal pressed tight against his leg, trembling but refusing to run. The mare groaned weakly from the travois, lifting her head only enough to bare her teeth in defiance. The wolves fanned wider, closing the ring. Their growls rumbled through the air, low and hungry, vibrating in Jake's bones. He counted his bullets. 2 left. That was all. He swallowed hard. 2 bullets and 7 wolves. The alpha lunged first. Jake fired. Crack, the shot whistling past its muzzle, kicking up dust in its eyes. The wolf skidded back, snarling. The others hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. Hunger drove them forward. Jake lifted his rifle again, finger tightening on the trigger, when a thunderous sound split the air. Hooves. A roar of hooves. The earth shook beneath them as a cloud of dust rose on the horizon. And through it came the herd. Wild mustangs, dozen strong, charge across the scrub, manes flying, eyes blazing. Their leader, a massive dapple-gray stallion, screamed a challenge that split the sky. The wolves faltered. The pack, so bold a moment before, shrank back as the stallion barreled forward, striking the ground with iron hooves. Behind him, the herd spread wide, flanking the canyon edge in a wall of muscle and fury. Jake stared, stunned, as the wild horses thundered around him. He had seen Mustangs run free before, but never like this. Never united, never so fierce, never like an army descending from the plains themselves. The wolves backed off, snarling, unwilling to take on a herd this strong. One by one, they slunk away, tails low, until only the alpha remained. He held his ground a moment longer, eyes locked with Jake's, wild against weary. Then, with a low growl, he turned and melted into the shadows. Silence fell, broken only by the pounding of Jake's heart. The foal whinnied, stamping its little hooves in excitement. The mare, though weak, lifted her head just enough to nick her softly toward the herd. Jake lowered his rifle, breathing hard. His voice came rough, odd. "Well, I'll be damned." The stallion circled once, ears pinned, eyes flashing. He was no tame beast. Every line of him spoke of freedom, danger, and wild defiance. Yet when his gaze fell on Jake, he didn't charge, didn't bolt. He stood still, as though measuring the man who had stood guard over one of their own. For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into forever, Jake and the stallion locked eyes. Two leaders, two fighters, bound by nothing, and yet by something. Finally, the stallion tossed his head, snorted, and wheeled away. The herd followed, thundering back across the plain in a blur of power and dust. In moments they were gone, vanished into the horizon as if they'd never been. Only their tracks remained. Jake sank to one knee, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. His hands shook as he wiped sweat from his brow. The foal pressed against him again, soft muzzle nudging his arm. He let out a rough laugh, half relief, half disbelief. "Guess you got some powerful friends, little one." Dusty pawed the dirt, still nervous, but the danger had passed. The wolves were gone. For now. Jake checked the mare again. She was alive, but barely. Her fever burned hot, her breath shallow. He touched her neck gently. "Hold on, girl. Just a little longer." He looked to the horizon. Riverton lay miles away, a half-day's ride if he had been alone. But with the mare dragging behind on a travois, it could take twice that, maybe more, and time was running out. Jake straightened, every muscle aching, but his resolve hard as iron. He'd started this fight, and he wasn't about to quit. He couldn't, not with the foal's eyes fixed on him, trusting him, begging him still. "Come on," he whispered, gripping Dusty's reins. "We ain't done yet." And so the cowboy, the foal, and the wounded mare pressed on into the burning sun, leaving the canyon behind, unaware that word of this strange rescue, of a cowboy walking with wild mustangs, would soon spread farther than Jake ever imagined. Chapter 5. The Weight of Man. The plains stretched wide under the high Wyoming sun. Heat shimmered on the horizon, the air dry as bone. Dust rose with every dragging scrape of the travois, every tired step from Dusty's hooves. Jake Turner's shoulders ached with the pull of the reins. His throat burned, lips cracked, eyes stinging from dust. He'd lost track of hours. Time had become nothing but a rhythm of step, drag, step, drag. The mare lay weak across the travois, her sides heaving. Her fever was worse now, her eyes glassy, but still she clung to life. The foal trotted beside her, hooves clicking, nickering every few breaths as if urging her to hold on. Jake had patched wounds before. He'd fought storms and snakes, outlaws and drought. But he'd never felt this kind of weight, the weight of a life balanced so fragile on the edge of death, and a little one who believed in him with every heartbeat. By afternoon, the first rooftops of Riverton came into view. The town shimmered in the haze, a handful of buildings huddled on the plain, saloon, blacksmith, livery, and the little clapboard clinic. Jake's legs nearly gave out with relief. But as they reached the main street, dust swirling around them, every head turned. Men paused outside the saloon, mugs in hand. Women on porches shaded their eyes. Children gawked from behind their mothers' skirts, and whispers spread like fire. "That there's Turner. Lord Almighty, what's he draggin'? A Mustang mare? He brought wild horses into town." The foal balked at the stairs, pressing close to Jake's side. Dusty snorted, ears pinned back. Jake ignored them all, his jaw tight. He headed straight for the clinic. The town doctor, old Doc Murphy, met him at the door, spectacles glinting in the sun. He stopped short, frowning at the sight of the bleeding mare on the travois. "Good God, Jake, what in blazes have you done?" "Got a wounded Mustang," Jake rasped, voice rough from dust. "She needs stitches, medicine, or she won't make it." The doctor shook his head, lips pursed. "You know I patch up cattle and ranch stock, Jake. While Mustangs? That's government property, nuisance beasts. Can't waste supplies on him." Jake stepped forward, eyes hard. "She's dying, document." Doc Murphy held his ground. "And what happens if I patch her up? You letting her go free again? What then? She'll just raid some rancher's pasture, eat feed meant for cattle. These horses are wild for a reason." A murmur of agreement rippled from the bystanders. A rancher spat in the dirt. "Best put a bullet in her head, Turner. Do the decent thing." The foal squealed, stamping its tiny hooves as if it understood the words. Jake's fists clenched. He'd buried too many things in his life. Dreams, people, hopes. He wasn't burying this mare. Not while her foal begged him with those eyes. His voice dropped low, dangerous. "You got two choices: document open that clinic door, or watch me do this myself right here in the dirt. And if she dies cause you wouldn't help, you'll live with it on your conscience." The street went silent. Every eye turned to Doc Murphy. The old man's jaw worked. He looked from Jake to the trembling foal to the bleeding mare. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he stepped aside. "Bring her in." Relief slammed through Jake, so hard his knees almost buckled. He motioned Dusty forward, dragging the travois into the cool shadow of the clinic. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and herbs. Doc Murphy rolled up his sleeves, grumbling under his breath, but his hands were steady as he prepared his instruments. "Set her down there, and keep that foal calm. Don't need it raising hell while I work." Jake knelt by the mare's head, whispering soft words. The foal pressed against him, trembling, eyes darting to every strange sound. As the doctor cleaned the wound, cut away bandages, and poured carbolic acid over torn flesh, the mare screamed. The foal bolted, but Jake caught it, pulling the trembling body against his chest. "Easy now. Easy, little one. He's helped pin her. He's helped pin." The foal pressed its face into his shirt, heart hammering. Jake held on, whispering steady, though his own eyes burned. The procedure stretched on, stitches, salves, new wrappings. At last, the doctor stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "She'll live," he said gruffly. "If fever don't take her. Needs rest. Needs time." Jake exhaled a long, shuddering breath. His hand rested on the mare's neck, feeling her pulse strong beneath his fingers. The foal lifted its head from his chest, eyes brighter now, fixed on him. Jake met that gaze, and in that moment, something inside him shifted. He wasn't just saving a horse. He wasn't just answering a plea. He was carrying a promise. Doc Murphy muttered as he packed his tools. "You're stirring up trouble, Turner. Mark my words. Ranchers don't take kindly to Mustangs. You bring in one into town, you'll have a fight on your hands." Jake's jaw tightened. He looked down at the foal, at the wounded mare. Then he set his hat firm on his head. "Let him come." The foal whinnied softly, as if in answer. And for the first time in years, Jake Turner felt the fire of purpose burn in his chest. Chapter 6. Man Against the Herd. Riverton streets, buzzed with talk before the mare, had even settled into the back of the clinic. By sundown, the whole town knew. Jake Turner had dragged a wild Mustang into their midst, stitched and patched it, and defied the unwritten law of the plains. Wild horses weren't meant to be saved. They were meant to be driven off, captured, broken, or shot when they trespassed on cattle range. Now, with lanterns glowing in windows and boots stomping on the boardwalk, the whispers turned to something harder. Jake leaned against the clinic wall, hat low over his brow. Dusty dozed nearby, reins looped over a hitch post. The foal pressed close to Jake's side, refusing to leave him even for a step. Inside, The mare lay resting, fevered but alive, Doc Murphy watching her with a gruff sort of reluctance. A door banged open across the street. Harlan Briggs stepped out, a rancher with a gut like a whiskey barrel and a temper twice as mean. He owned the biggest spread in Riverton, and he hated Mustangs with a fire that had burned for years. Turner, his voice boomed, drawing men out of the saloon, women off porches, kids from alleys. You gone loco? Bringing a pest into town? Jake straightened, eyes flat as steel. She's hurt. She's dying. And she deserves a chance same as any horse. Harlan spat in the dirt, his lip curling. Deserves nothing. Them beasts steal grass from cattle, break fences, foul water holes. You think Savon one mare matters? That foal grow up wild, breed more the cursed things. You should have put a bullet in her where she lay. The foal squealed, pressing tighter to Jake's leg. Its tiny body trembled, but it didn't run. Jake laid a hand on its neck, his voice quiet but steady. She begged me. The crowd murmured, some scoffing, some uneasy. Harlan barked a laugh. Begged you? It's a dumb beast, Turner. Ain't nothing behind those eyes but instinct. Jake's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, hat brim shadowing his face. His word came slow, heavy. You weren't there, Briggs. You didn't see her. That foal came to me. It asked for help, clear as any man ever could. And I'll be damned if I let anyone say different. The murmurs grew louder. Some nodded, softening. Others muttered, shaking their heads. Harlan's eyes narrowed. You always were a fool. Losing, your family broke you clean in half. Now you're talking to wild stock like they're people. Well, I'll put this plain. Tomorrow morning, that mare's gone. Either you drive her out, or I'll bring men to do it for you. He spat once more, turned, and stalked off. The crowd scattered after him, whispers chasing into the night. Silence fell heavy. Jake sank onto the hitch rail, hands still resting on the foal's trembling back. He felt the old wound in his chest, the one that never healed, tear a little wider. He'd failed people before, lost them to sickness, to fate. He'd sworn never to care again. But here was this foal, this fragile, desperate little life that had chosen him, trusted him. And Jake knew he couldn't walk away. Not this time. The clinic door creaked open. Doc Murphy stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. His voice was low. She's holding on, but just barely. Fever's fierce. By rights, she ought to be dead already. Can't say I've seen an animal fight like that in years. Jake nodded, jaw tight. Doc studied him a moment, then sighed. You stirred up a hornet's nest, Turner. Ranchers won't stand for a Mustang in town. Not long. And truth told, maybe they're right. Wild horses don't belong here. Jake's eyes flashed. They don't belong dying in the dirt, either. The foal lifted its head, nickering softly, as if echoing him. Doc Murphy looked at the little creature, then back at Jake. Something softened in his gaze. He didn't argue further, just patted Jake's shoulder and went back inside. Jake leaned back, staring up at the night sky. Stars burned bright over the plains, cold and endless. He thought of his wife's laugh, his child's tiny hand, memories buried but never gone. He felt the weight of them pressing, the old guilt, the loneliness. And then he felt the foal nuzzle his arm, warm and alive, tethering him to this moment. He whispered into the night, voice rough. Not this time. I ain't losing you. Not while I've still got breath. The foal pressed closer, as though it understood. And so the line was drawn. By morning, Jake knew the ranchers would come. With ropes, with rifles, with anger sharp enough to spill blood. And when they did, he would stand. For the mare, for the foal, for the unspoken bond between man and Mustang that had already changed him forever. Chapter 7. Dawn on the Plains. The first streaks of sunrise painted the Wyoming sky in hues of fire and ash when Jake heard them coming. Hoofbeats. Dozens. Dust rose at the eastern edge of town, and soon the riders came into view, Harlan Briggs at the head, with ranch hands and a few townsfolk tagging along. Some carried ropes, some rifles, all with grim determination etched on their faces. Jake stood alone outside the clinic, hand resting on Dusty's reins, the foal pressed tight against his leg. Behind him, through the open door, the mare lay weak but alive, breath rattling but steady. Doc Murphy hovered inside, unsure if he was doctor or hostage to fate. Jake touched the brim of his hat, eyes fixed on the advancing men. His voice, when it came, carried clear on the morning air. "You'll have to ride through me first." Harlan reined in, sneer tugging his lips. "You're a damn fool, Turner. 1 man against 20? Step aside before you get trampled." Jake didn't flinch. His voice was iron. "I buried a wife and son in this dirt. I've stared down more grief than any man ought to. You think I fear death? No, Briggs. I fear living one more day as a coward. That foal came to me for help. That mare trusted me, and I'll be damned if I betray that trust." The men muttered among themselves. Some shifted in their saddles, uneasy. The foal let out a sharp, piercing cry, as though it understood the stakes. Its tiny legs quivered, but it stepped forward, planting itself in front of Jake, head held high. The sight stilled the air. A wild creature, a baby, shielding a man. Not running, not hiding. Standing. Jake felt his throat tighten. He laid a hand gently on the foal's neck, whispering so only it could hear. "That's it, little one. We stand together." Then he looked back up, eyes locking with Harlan's. "You see that? That's loyalty. That's courage. Tell me, what kind of men are we if we kill it?" The silence stretched. Hooves stamped. A lark sang high above. Finally, Doc Murphy's voice cracked the stillness from the clinic doorway. "She's stabilizing. That mare's tougher than any stock I've seen. With care, she'll live. And if she does, she'll run again." He paused, his weathered face softening. "Maybe she'll even lead a herd. Stronger for what she survived." Some ranchers lowered their rifles. A few nodded, but Harlan snarled, spurring his horse forward. "You're all bewitched. It's just a cursed Mustang. A rifle cracked. Not aimed at Jake or the mare, but skyward." Sheriff Daniels, silent till now, lowered the barrel. His eyes burned with authority. "That's enough, Harlan." The sheriff's voice rolled like thunder. "These hills got room for cattle and Mustangs. They've been here before us, and they'll be here long after. Jake Turner saved a life today. That ain't weakness. That's decency. And this town still respects decency." Harlan seethed, but the men behind him shifted, no longer willing to follow. He cursed, wheeled his horse, and galloped off in a storm of dust. The threat was broken. Jake sagged, exhaustion flooding him. The foal pressed against him, whickering softly. He knelt, pulling the little creature close, his rough hands trembling. "You did it, little one. You saved her and me." Days passed. The mare's wounds knit with surprising strength. Fever broke. One golden afternoon, Jake led her and the foal to the edge of the open plains. The herd, wild, free, and waiting, stood in the distance, manes whipping in the wind. The foal balked, torn between worlds. It nuzzled Jake's chest, eyes wide and pleading. Jake swallowed hard, his voice thick. "You're free now. Both of you. Go on." The mare gave a low call. The foal lingered one moment longer, then trotted to her side. Together, they galloped to the herd, the ground shaking under their hooves, the sky opening wide above them. Jake stood alone, head over his heart, tears he didn't fight rolling down his face. Dusty nickered, nudging his shoulder. Jake smiled through the ache. "They'll remember, old boy. Maybe not me, but what we did. They'll remember." And as the Mustangs vanished into the horizon, Jake felt something he hadn't in years. Not loss, not grief, but peace. Sparkle's epilogue. Months later, cowhands riding the far ridges swore they saw a herd led by a scarred mare and her bold young foal. They said the foal wasn't afraid of men, that it would stand and watch with fearless eyes, as though searching for one man in particular. And those who told the tale, around campfires, in saloons, or whispered to children, always ended it the same way. They say wild Mustangs never bow to man. But once under a moonlit sky, a foal bowed to a cowboy, and neither was ever the same again.